Hey, what's going on, guys? So there's a topic I had in mind that I've been thinking about for a few months, and the person I really wanted to discuss with that was my good buddy Lincoln Wright. Some of you guys may know him. I've done interviews with him in the past. I thought he would be a great person to discuss this topic with, just based on his experience in the modeling world, and so I will not give the topic away quite yet, but we'll just get right into the interview. It's really more of a discussion than an interview, but guys, grab a snack, grab a drink, grab a model kit to work on while you're just listening to this discussion between Link and I if you're interested. But thank you guys so much for checking out the video. Let's get right into the discussion. All right, guys, welcome. Here we are with Link. Hey, Link.
Hey, Zach.
How's it going?
You're still the worst.
Yes. That was so fun. We need to get back to that back and forth. Like that was such a fun time.
It was a bunch of fun. I giggled so much that I did drop three drops of pee.
Am I
allowed to say that? Am I going to get beeped out already?
Anyway, I'll just go ahead and start off. You can give a little introduction as to just who you are, what you do for anybody who's not up to speed. This is certainly not your first time here on the channel. I think we've done 7, 8, 9 interviews, something at this point.
Yeah, thank you. This is probably the show that I'm on the most.
Is it?
And I think so. And you were the first, Zach.
Yes.
You were my first. So yeah, you were the first one to reach out and invite me onto a show, and I never forget. Do you remember like you'd watch old shows like Letterman or something like that, the Tonight shows, and they'd always have their old guests on, like Bill Murray. Bill Murray would come out.
I was just thinking that earlier today.
Yeah, right. And Bill Murray would come out and go, "Yeah, you were the first show that didn't tell me to F off." Yeah. So I love coming back here, and they just come out, and he wouldn't even pitch his products. No. So I understand you're in a new movie, Bill. Yeah, maybe.
Exactly.
Yeah, that was great. So we've got that kind of thing going now.
Exactly. Yeah, I was just thinking that exactly with Bill Murray earlier today.
And I'm almost looking as old as Bill Murray too. So I'm feeling it. But yeah, it's pretty awesome actually. So and I remember we just left Japan. We were set up there at the Gold Coast in Australia. And it was really, really hot. It was actually kind of opposite world to what you and I have got now. Yeah. I am in a cold place, and you're somewhere hot and sweaty. So yeah, and exactly. I guess it kind of becomes funnier over the years. We have more shared history. To tell to people, and they can look at us and go, "What are these guys talking about?"
Right. On that note, so Lincoln's got a website. You were supposed to be introducing yourself when we got on.
Oh, that was supposed to be my pitch, was it? Hi, I'm Lincoln Wright. You may have seen me on such other failed enterprises as. So seriously though, so my name's Link. I'm my website, as Zach was mentioning, paintonplastic.com, and I have my own little thing now. I guess I could say I was a studio modeler in Japan for many years, and then we upgraded, moved to Australia for our little lady. She really wanted to be educated, our daughter, be educated in Australia. And I just got her report card this morning, and she's doing really well. So, that worked. That worked. Thanks, Tabs. You're a legend. And interestingly too, she's got she scored very highly on her Japan section of it, which is amusing and kind of and according to Mum is like, well, you better. But because she didn't go to school there, she went to an international school. It's all cool, and the education system's fine with it. So I just wanted to make sure people know I'm not scamming it. And I do sci-fi models. Love sci-fi models. Sci-fi models have been my life, all of my life. So I mean, it's probably one of the biggest reasons I actually moved to Japan in the first place. Sure. I'm an author a couple of times now. I mean, I've been in a bunch of books for Hobby Japan as a backup singer, dancer. I was like one of the solid gold dancers for Hobby Japan for the longest time. And I do have a book called Sci-Fi, FAQ, which is a pretty big one. I mean, it's a ridiculously large book in of itself, but I think for the genre, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I tried hard to get as much different stuff in as possible, especially, all the greatest hits. But there's a lot of Japanese stuff in it, of course. Can I say, as a funny aside too, it got to
Yes.
the point where the publisher said, "All right, enough Japanese sci-fi." He doesn't really, but especially MAK, enough MAK. And that's been the big reach out, though. I had a bunch of folks from around the world
Yeah.
ping me that they're all getting started in Maschinen Krieger, which Zach is really good at and big into now too.
Big
Can
into, I'll give you that.
you partially call that my fault as well? Because
That's yes, I think to a degree that's what led me to find your channel in the first place and to find your content, because I was interested in I just seen the models around and I thought they were really cool, and that's how I found you and your content. And
coolness.
yeah, it's been kind of like a, what do you call it? I don't know, symbiotic sort of growth. Yeah, I'm sure I've
From my point of view, it's totally parasitic on my part.
yeah, maybe.
But I'm just kidding. No, it's awesome. I'm so, and you've really grown a lot with it too. But I've also seen it influence and improve your Gunpla as well. Your paint skills over the last. We've known each other what, like 4 years, 5 years, maybe.
Yeah.
Have really increased over time. I'm really liking lots of the stuff you're doing.
Well, thank you.
So that's really awesome. But that also makes me come to the point where I mentioned I've got the first book out. I've also actually got my second book out. My current one is on pre-order on paintonplastic.com. And it's need like a drum roll and stuff, don't I? It's been a life goal to get out. I was pitching the studio this for years, but it's always been really hard to get them to agree to it because, they're scared of gaijin and the outside world.
Yeah.
And even though I was pitching it with the gaijin face. So
a lot of those,
yeah. It was always like,
yes.
Well, and I totally get it to the poor guys because it's something they could not have been in control of. They'd have to release a lot of trust there and just make sure that I was doing the right thing. So I applied my time. I've got that first book out, which has been pretty successful as far as I can see, the Sci-Fi FAQ. And that's when, once they got their hands on that, they were like, so, Link does totally get it. We'll go ahead with this other idea that he's been pitching us. And they said yes to the first ever all-English Maschinen Krieger book. And it's an official one for the 40th anniversary.
Very cool.
And I'm really happy with it. Yeah. So we're still in the process though. So shipping, printing, shipping, and so on are the steps that are happening next. If you want to have a look at it, paintonplastic.com. Can't miss it. Yes. Hey, thanks, Zach. This is the first time I've done a plug first in the interview. So thanks a bunch for that.
At the start of it, really?
At the start of the video.
Do it at the end?
So I'm done now.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that was it, guys. We just wanted to have Lincoln on so he could plug his book and the checks in the mail, right, Link?
Yep. Thanks so much.
Sure.
Hey, and I need to say this too. Zach bought it before I offered him one. So thank you, Zach. I mean, you just you up and bought it yourself without any urging. So I really appreciate that. Thank you very much. You're okay if I sign it, right?
What is it? Will that hurt the resale value?
Yeah. Dear Zachs, and dear anyone named Zach in Florida, make it even more specific. So it's hard to tell. Has to have some business relationship with Gundam USA. That was really awesome. So I hope you're okay with that because I can't not
like a really long letter on
when I'm posting them, right? Because we'll be doing that all ourselves. When I see your name come up, it's not like I can't go, it's Zach. Right? Draw dirty pictures in it and stuff.
At least, yeah. Come on. No, I'm super excited about it. Yeah, I think it's really cool. I can remember the first Maschinen Krieger book that I got was the I think it was the How to Maschinen Krieger Volume 1. That's not going back that far. It's not like, yes, I remember his many years ago. It's maybe like 4 years ago, probably around the time when we kind of first met. But yeah, it's such an awesome book. But it's all in Japanese, so like you can put in the work to translate everything. That it's going to be really nice to just have it actually like you can much more easily to consume.
The things like the law. I mean, the modeling skills themselves. I mean, they're available from me in other publications too, so that's
Sure.
not unique.
Yeah.
But it was the first time that I was able to. I've been a backstory writer for, especially for that genre, for a really long time. So I used to write the stories in English first. Don't be thrown off by my accent. I am actually a wannabe native speaker. And so I used to write in English first, and then I'd translate and make sure, and then I'd get help with the translation too to make sure I was getting it correct into Japanese. So many of the stuff that we've seen in the books over the years that's been published in Japanese first, they actually did start out in English. That one was always, I was like, man, wouldn't it be great if I could get the story out in English first, because it retains a little bit more of the original flavor, I feel.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and it's like the stuff that was on the back of boxes and Hobby Japan. Some of it was in model art, but yeah. So being able to put them in, but also have it licensed. I'm not sure if this is too weird a tangent, but being a complete Japanophile, and I mean that as a positive too. I have so much love and respect for Japan that it was more important for me to make sure it was connected to, gave paid correct, is it homage, I guess, or paid respect to the
not
creatives.
like, okay, I'm gonna go do my thing in English, and it's gonna be completely separated from.
No, I just couldn't do it. It would
Right.
feel very wrong, and they were very accepting of me then, so it seems the correct way to pay it back.
Sure.
And listen, especially for your audience, you guys probably understand this better than any other audience I've pitched this to so far, would be that it features, so it's 128 pages, 30 pages are by Max Watanabe. Yes, the Max Watanabe. This is actually the first time that he's published in English, which is, plus it was special because we interviewed him and recorded it. So I wanted to make sure I got everything that he said, and not just hearing it through my filters, as I'm listening. Because I'm still a little bit in awe of the guy too. The more I find out about who he is, he was just some guy I met as a friend at first, right? So, but as I find out more about what he's done and what he's doing, he's quite high up there, right? So being able as a friend to translate what he was sharing about his models, because when you're talking with your buddies about your models, you're very open and forthcoming, right? Oh man, I messed this part up. This one was a bit of a fiasco. I fixed this one up. Oh, this was cool, that kind of thing. So when he went through all 10, I believe it is, of his models, and showed us some very unique Japanese viewpoints, like just as a spoiler, I want to mention something called kakushaji. It's like the hidden flavor of something, and it's like, you'll know this one, Zach. You know when you get a Japanese dish, and I'm sure Korean dishes do it too. They'll sometimes have something unusual in it, like yuzu, yuzu flavor, or
Citrus.
like a kind of, but it's a very particular citrus plant. The yuzu. I don't know. I don't even know if we have a proper English word for it, because I think we just call it yuzu.
It's probably called like Asian citrus or something.
Yeah, right. Something maybe like that. And it will change the flavor of a dish completely. Max was very adamant about discussing that concept. So capturing that for one of the particular finishes, but then also, micronizing it down. Is micronize even a proper word? But micronoding it down. I've got to make it sci-fi. Micronoding it down to fit into the layout was exciting too. So I've actually been really looking forward to talking with you about this, because you know about Max, and we've met him, right? We met him together.
Very briefly. He was very busy at the time.
Poor guy, but
it's Shizuoka. He's, I'm sure he's slammed.
That was me really squeezing the relationship, wasn't it? Hey, Max, here's some random friends of mine. Please say hi.
Yeah.
He kicked me afterwards.
I still appreciated it though. Yes.
Afterwards, he said, dude, don't come around during shows. It's the worst. I said, sorry, man, but that's also why we were there. But he was really cool about it. But so it's not some of the, I see a lot of Max stuff out there, like, the priming and the different things. I mean, we might be able to get some of that in the future with different properties. But these ones, it was more about, he wanted to share his, the evolution of his builds through this property thing. So the Mark 44 in particular was a really good one for him.
Wow.
but
Yeah.
it's right on the outskirts of Machine and Krieger. So if there's some Max fans out there, this is just a must get. It's the first time ever.
Yeah,
And
I think. Oh no, I just think I'm super excited about that too. But as much as I'm excited and like as much, I mean, like as somebody who also, I mean, like you know, I know who he is and like know
cool.
about a little bit about his history. Yeah, I'm also like able to recognize how huge it is for him to be a part of the book and everything. But at the same time, I don't want to take away from all the work that you've put into it. I don't want to make it seem like it's the Max book, but I mean like it's the Lincoln and Max, and it's the whole
It's
thing.
it's funny because this is a weird thing to share maybe, but I guess it makes the interview unique.
Mm.
The it's I so I'm not trying to be I'm trying to find the words to express
Mhm.
this idea because the it's both been awe inspiring, but also uh, a little bit humbling as well.
Mm.
That a lot of the feedback I've had is that people are buying it because it's mine,
Mhm.
and I'm like, dude, it should be for Max.
Mhm.
Don't you know?
Right.
It's not for me.
Yeah.
It's for Max. I mean, so that one has been a little bit of a man. I don't want to call it trippy completely,
No, yeah, I get that.
but
Yeah.
it is a little bit, and especially because remember the background singing, the
Mhm.
because that's been my life for so many
Right.
years
Right.
that I was never the draw card kind of thing. So this is it almost felt like a little bit of a flip, but
Mm.
I know it's not true. That's the main thing. Don't
Mm.
worry. I know it's
Yeah.
not really true. It's
Yeah.
more that it's part of my my due diligence there to there's actually a full spread, so the 2 pages explaining who and where Max and Yokoyama-san both come from. I
Mm.
just thought it was the least I could do. I didn't want
Yeah, of
to.
course.
I didn't want to be ripping them off,
Mm.
standing on the shoulders of giants kind of thing.
Mhm.
I wanted to make sure that they were, fully represented and people understand that
Sure.
I'm just playing in their sandpit kind of thing.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah,
and they were pretty happy and pretty cool with that. And it was Max's idea. That's important to put out there. Max is one. When I asked him for access to some of my older models, he was like, "Dude, use mine." It's like,
Mhm.
"Well, really?" It's like, "Okay." He
Mm.
was very cool about it. So I
That's
hope
awesome.
that's one of the things I really want to. That's one of my big life goals. And
Mm.
I hope you don't mind me. I don't want to sound too uh, pie in the sky sort of pipe dream
Mhm.
sort of thing, Zach. But
Mm.
if I can help bring Japanese sci-fi just through what I can do closer to those of us in the West, that's my big mission.
Mm.
That's my mission to kind of bring the feeling over and doesn't
Mm.
make me correct. It's just this is my take. And
Mm.
that was Yokoyama-san's big thing about it. He said
Mm.
that's why the book has that cringy title of it has my name in it, and it's not
Mhm.
because that wasn't my choice.
Mhm.
Yokoyama-san said, "Do that because I want you to share your journey with it. That way, it's always
Mhm.
correct, and I want other people to enjoy that with you, kind of thing."
Mm.
I was like, "Okay, that's a really smart idea."
It's quite, yeah, really. I mean, it's such a unique experience because when you're talking about like bringing that Japanese
Mm,
mind of it, like it's something that I think like so few people other than you, I don't know, like really who other than you has had the opportunity to experience and like to learn firsthand, like under these people. I mean, like,
right,
yeah, like Max and Koyokama-san are two people among many fantastically talented and skilled modelers, but like they're in quite unique positions themselves to be like such like godfathers of this genre, and especially Machine and Krieger is
right,
like the main thing, right? But like Max in particular is so much involved. Like he has such a history even in Gunpla and just like sci-fi
right.
modeling, everything, Macross and all that. But
Yeah, yeah. He's really in touch with a lot of them now with that
mm,
Plamax range of stuff that they're
yeah.
producing. So I'm not saying there's going to be more of that, but there's totally going to be more of that. So the series won't only be Machine
Mm,
and Krieger. Uh, I guess sometimes, see, I'm so used to working for publishers that I'm always thinking back in my mind what I have permission to say, a,
Mm.
a reveal.
Yeah.
That's why on the Plastic Posse podcast,
Mm.
those guys are really awesome. So if I could get the audiences cross listening to one another here, it would be great. Because I know a bunch of those guys. They're awesome modelers, and they're getting some more interest in sci-fi, and Zach's channel's awesome to be picking up ideas on that and seeing new kits and where to get them, like from GundamUSA.com.
Of course. That's actually a good transition. Why don't we
Thanks.
talk
Cool.
a little bit about that? I don't know if that was planned or not, but
I thought I better throw you a bone sooner or later, because I
yeah.
realized I was rambling and ranting. But
No,
yeah,
I'm sure once the book is out, and I just because I ordered one and just because I know you, it's not like I have like early access to it or anything. So once it's out,
no, I've shown him nothing, guys.
yeah,
Zach's got nothing because, well, I don't want to spoil it. I want everyone to go in like reasonably fresh. I got a
of
couple
course,
of
yeah.
picks out, but
No,
that was so
I'm
cool of
sure.
Zach. He bought it despite not knowing exactly what was in it. Did you even know the Max thing yet?
I think I had seen that
Okay.
you'd mentioned that,
Okay,
but
cool.
yeah, for me, I mean, like you said, you heard from other people that like they were just buying it really just for you, and it's the same thing for me. Like that was a nice perk, and I'm looking forward to seeing Max's work. But I've got like stacks of books with Max stuff in it. I mean, it'll be really cool to have it in English, but this
Cool.
is
Okay.
something that
Thanks, Zach.
I would have bought regardless. But no, I mean, once it's out.
Max, sorry, buddy. You're out for the next one.
Not necessary, Max. But I think once I am actually able to have it in hand and read through everything, I think it would definitely be worthwhile for us to sit down. I'm sure there's loads we could talk about.
Oh, cool. Okay.
All sorts of stories and stuff. I'm sure we could talk about related to the book once that's out. But
I can talk.
yes.
Sorry, guys.
Speaking of that, as I was saying, your transition, you've been doing a couple of other interviews lately. So just in case people are interested in hearing some more, because we're going to get into after this, like a topic that I wanted to talk to you about, kind of a specific topic, but like people want to hear more about what you've been doing recently on other podcasts and stuff. You want to just let people know where you've been at recently?
Sure. I really should have had that page open, shouldn't I? So that I could just rattle them off. I have a little bit of trouble remembering podcast names because the same with international magazine names. See, growing up with all the Japan ones, they're really fixed in my mind, like model graphics, armor modeling. They all seem very unique. But I'm just going to go to my blog. The best place is, guys, to go to paintonplastic.com, and I've got them in the section there on all blog. So I keep wanting to say podcast, but I'm stuffing it up. So all podcasts are listed on the blog. So the most recent one was Plastic Posse podcast. That one was great because the two guys interviewing me are actually reasonably good friends, and I've had a couple of chances to speak with them. So that one was a lot of fun. Actually, all of the podcasts recently, that's probably why this has been a bunch of fun, is that it's not first time on them. I'm a model making geek, so I'm an introvert. I am actually a little bit shy, but as you get to know people, you can open up a lot more. So that was the most recent Plastic Posse podcast. Just before that was the Scale Model podcast, and they'd actually taken a little bit of that was Anthony Goodman. Hey, buddy. They'd taken a little bit of a hiatus during the awful, the pandemic. So that was a chance for Anthony to dust the mic off, and he did it for me. I reached out and said, "Hey, can we have a talk?" And he did it, which is I was really happy about that. And Stuart, hope you're doing well. And then the other show was On the Bench podcast, the Aussie guys. How could I forget them? They're based here in Oz. So that's fun too, because, I've been back in Australia for 5 years now. So I'm feeling a little more Aussie again. I feel like I can string Aussie sentences together now. They're not coming out in Japanese. So
getting there.
Yeah, getting there.
Yeah.
So yeah, they were the last three, and they're all listed with links on my blog there, paintonplastic.com. They're fun too. They're fun.
Yeah, like I said, I've been meaning to get caught up on those too. But I know you've been busy.
Well, as a creative, I understand your challenge is that you're making content as you're
Sure.
building
Yeah.
and what have you, right? So,
Mm.
but for smart people who still have their hobby as their hobby, it's the
Mm-hmm.
best way to go. It's probably great listening for your at your bench time. Have a
Sure.
bit of a laugh.
When you're talking about being able to speak Oz again, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
been the thing for me. It's like talking,
Wow, yeah, yeah. You're going through that, yeah.
yeah, talking talking to people, even just talking to you, but especially like talking with like my coworkers and stuff here.
Right.
I feel not very smooth in my just like English
Mm,
conversation, and like I can get through it. And I think like obviously I have to talk a lot for my job, like just in videos. I'm talking in videos all the time, but it's like a
mm,
different
mm.
from just conversation.
Oh wow! See, I hadn't thought about that because so for folks watching, Zach and I met in Japan. We met. Zach came
Mm,
out for Shizuoka Hobby Show, and
mm,
he's pretty good in person. I mean, language wise, I didn't
sure.
notice any staccato, bumpiness.
Yeah.
But I do really. We're very similar like that because we spent so long
Mm,
immersed in a non-English world,
mm,
so that when you actually finally have the opportunity to it's like taking a speed limiter off that part of
mm,
your brain,
mhm,
because I remember I was always kind of passing what I was trying to say through a like a spell checker almost.
mhm.
You know, is
Yep.
this word in common use in Japan? Because
Right.
in Japanese, though, it was always full speed because the people
Mm,
around you were native to that language, so you could just let it fly.
mm,
But in speaking English, though, I always had to be a little bit careful so as not to
mhm.
embarrass the people around me. And I'm sure that's exactly what you were feeling, right, Zach?
Yeah.
But then when you're back into the the flipped version of that world, you can't turn it off that easily, can you? You
Mhm,
still, but when you're speaking not in a professional context, you're kind of checking against the speed limiter, but
mm,
it's not helping because no one around
mm,
you speaks Korean, Japanese, what have you, right?
mm.
It's bizarre, isn't it?
Yeah. I feel like I'm always
Mm.
thinking
Yeah.
so much about my words rather than, yeah, it's hard to just kind of just let it go like you would just as a normal native
Yeah,
speaker.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right?
That's why I think these recent
Mm,
podcasts, that's been one of the big kind of
mm,
upgrades for myself is that I'm much more fluent with English. I know it
mm.
sounds bizarre, but I
No,
feel like
yeah,
my English fluency has improved a lot because if you
yeah.
go back and watch the old interviews I've got with Zach on the channel here, uh, yeah, I was
I
pretty
need to come.
staccato. I've even had folks tell me that they said you used to have more of a Japanese accent, a weird
Mm,
accent, a mixed accent. And that's yeah, I wouldn't doubt it. You know,
mhm. Yeah, totally.
qu- quarter of a century is a heck of a time. Plus, be honest. I mean, I've been here for 5 years, but I work. I'm
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
So
right.
inside the home is still it's quite Japanese at least half the
Of
time. So
course.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
for good too. For good. Just in case my
Yeah.
wife watches this. For good.
All smiles there.
All smiles. All smiles. All smiles. So guys,
English.
let's be supportive of Zach. Zach's gone through a huge life change, and
Indeed.
we're really proud of him. And it's a big thing. It is. It is. He'll
Mm,
laugh it off, but man, when you're an adult and change countries and cultures again, even going back to the one that used to be yours,
mm,
because it's the future version of it, it's not the
mhm.
same. And boy,
Sure.
you go through quite a reawakening, don't you?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he's also doing it for the kids. So well done. Super
Right.
dad moments here. Super dad props.
All the today's episode was all stemmed out of the idea that I had been thinking about, and I had been wanting to talk about this particular topic with
Hot
Link.
dogs. Hot
Yes,
dogs with bacon bits.
ever since I moved back, I'm wondering what's the deal with hot dogs. I've been thinking about this topic, and so that's why this, even though we've been kind of doing the normal interview thing so far, from now we're going to get into a topic I hope that will be kind of different from just like a kind of a standard interview, like what do you like? What's your favorite color? What do you do on weekends?
Damn, already said hot dogs.
That's your favorite color?
Seriously though, you going to the US for me will be all about barbecue and hot dogs.
4th of July is coming up.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, how
Missing
I
it.
want to be there. Yeah.
Uh, but no, the topic is realism in models, and I know this is something in Lincoln's content that I know you've talked a lot about, and just I'll kind of give an introduction as to this, is kind of like what I was thinking, why I wanted to talk to you about this, and like kind of my thoughts about
Sure.
it, and then we can kind of get into the back and forth. But I know this is something I'm sure you've dealt with in a lot of your content, is like realism in just trying to make the model, because it's a scaled down model of something, that's supposed to be like a real thing, trying to
Mm,
make the model look realistic. But what I've been like kind of thinking about a lot recently is, how do we express realism in like the actual feeling of the situation that the model is in
mm,
real life. So like uh usually most of the model kits that we're building in the sci-fi genre, they're mostly weapons of war, with in the machining crew property, also like Gundam, even stuff like frame arms girls, that type of like mecha musume kits, like they've got weapons, guns,
mm.
swords, whatever it might be.
They're different though. They're already
Hmm.
real. They're one to one.
Oh, that's true. So
Yeah, they're
that's,
real. They're
I
real.
guess, slightly different. But my point is that we're dealing with, weapons of war that,
Mm,
and by definition, you have like a Gundam kit, and it's got a really cool gun, and you think, oh, I really love this gun design, I want to, build it into this diorama where it's doing this really
mm,
cool like action pose shooting a gun. But like that gun is designed to kill people. Like that's the whole purpose of, and like you have
mm,
this really
mm,
awesome Gundam design, or like, an SAFS, whatever it
mm,
might be in Machine Krieger, that
mm.
thing that we're like fantasizing about and saying like how cool it looks and like enjoying it. This is really a, it's something that's made to destroy things and kill people, and like that's a
Right.
really difficult realism, I think, to express in model making, and that's kind of the thing that I've been struggling with. How do you express that
Yeah,
sort of thing?
especially for the past, are we up to about the 6 months mark yet? It's getting up there, isn't it?
Mm,
So yeah, these thoughts have gone through my mind as well. Of course,
mm.
of course. Mm. But
Um,
I'm impressed that you're thinking about this too, Zach. And
mm,
thank you for reaching out to me about it.
mhm.
Because you can imagine it's something that's on my mind. Yes, of course.
Well, I think that I know that from your experiences, learning from the people who you've learned from, and like growing in the like
Mm,
how you've grown up, how you've developed, all your skills and experience and everything through the hobby. I know just from talking to you about like
mm.
you've had, I know like other, I think probably similar types of conversations, along
Sure.
like contextual things like within modeling, not just like how do
Mm,
you paint a model and like how do you apply top coat, but like really deep
mm,
kind of stuff. So I feel like this is probably something that um, maybe has come up in conversations you've had with
oh
people,
yeah, yeah. I
in your
mean,
life too.
this is how I got. It's one of the big reasons I think why I got the gig for the law writing
Hmm.
was because the people who'd done it previously to me. I'm not lying. I had to scratch my nose. I have to keep it light.
That's not a tell.
It's not a tell.
Mhm.
The the was actually being interested in and having a solid grasp of history
Mm,
was a big part of it actually, because you're exactly right. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of these different interpretations. It's a hobby, right? So,
mm.
uh, and they're fun, supposed to be fun. So,
Sure.
however however we enjoy it is
Mm.
more than fine.
Yeah,
I think that's important to throw out
of
there.
course. Yeah.
Um, Yet some of us had uh, see, elevated might not be the right word, but some of us had obviously had multiple interests
Mm,
related to what we do as a hobby.
mm,
So, and I myself have gone through different phases of, and I love
mm,
tanks. Well, no,
mm.
and this one was really specific too. Yokohama-san was very clever about how he asked these questions. He said, "Well, but do you like tanks or toy tanks?" It's like, oh yeah, you're
Mm,
right. Actually, toy tanks are way cooler than real tanks. Real tanks are kind of
mm,
like, I mean, I've gone and had a look at them. There's some coolness to them, and you kind of, you wrap your knuckles on it and go tonk tonk tonk, and you go, oh, that's what armor feels like. Wow, that's kind of
mhm,
scary. And he goes, now what about airplanes? Do you really like the real airplanes, or do you prefer toy airplanes?
mm,
And I said, yeah, you're right.
mm,
Uh, I mean, I like the real airplanes too. I probably prefer uh, airplanes would be my number two straight after sci-fi genre, because
mm.
they're quite linked. I mean, at least in my mind.
No,
So
yeah, I get that. Yeah, totally.
yeah, so different phases of my life, I've been really enamored by these topics, right? So I'm a big fan of like warbirds, for example. Was making a bunch of them as a kid. So when you ask those questions, this is, do you like the real planes or do you like the toy versions of them? I thought, you're right.
Hmm.
It's because of the toy aspect of it that I love it even more. I'd much rather have a really cool version, like in my room or on my desk or what have you.
Mm,
So that part of it became special for me too, and it was kind of that divergence between it being a toy version of something and then a real version of something. Um, and I think that's what led me most to the like sci-fi, was because yes, uh, they're based on the concept of something possibly being a reality, right?
mm.
How many get out of jail cards did I use just there?
Yeah.
Possibility of being a
Mhm,
reality, but fundamentally, though, they're just not real. I
mm,
mean, Gundam is a cartoon, it's a
mhm.
show, which is great. So I don't have any issues with any ethical crossover there. I
Sure.
mean, yeah, the designs are awesome. There's so many cool stuff, right?
Mm.
Um, that, but they've never that I know of. And maybe there's been some weird tangential thing. Has a ship ever fallen on a dude and crushed him when it was all full of Gundam kits? I mean, I don't, I don't think Gundam's actually ever killed anyone,
Mm,
really. So, the
mm,
same with the Machine and Krieger stuff and those things. So, there was kind of that. I know it might be just an excuse,
mm,
but we talk about this, and
mm,
uh, the idea that war machines are something that as humans we like, we're
mm,
attracted to them
mhm,
from some aspects of the beauty of perhaps the lethality or such concepts, right? And
mm,
a good friend of mine, he posted something like this in our Facebook group recently. It was Takami-san. Hey mate.
mm,
He lives down in Melbourne now. He visited the War Memorial
mm,
um, in Canberra in Australia. Now, how cool is this though? That despite our countries having once been at war,
mm,
uh, I mean, US and Japan too, right? All of us,
mhm,
we were united against Japan, but we can be best buddies with these fine folks now.
mhm,
So that historical, I think, uh, understanding is really important as well. But he took a bunch of photos of World War II airplanes, warbirds that were up on display, Spitfires, Messerschmitts, and so on. And he also, I could tell just through his limited words there, that he was probably feeling a little. I mean, we could even maybe use the word creepy,
mm,
or somehow feeling a little disjointed,
mm,
saying that we understand the beauty of these things. Yet right now we're also repulsed because we're being confronted by the reality of a real war happening right now, and,
mm,
and people really suffering. We're
mm,
probably exposed to it like we've never been exposed to it before, if we're not directly there, kind of thing.
mm,
Through the things that are happening right now. So yeah, it's there's an interesting duality to it, isn't there, Zach? That
mm,
we're we're excited by some of these machines that ostensibly are made for war,
mm,
but they're also really cool toys that are fun to
mhm.
make and think about the stories that we've seen about them. I
Right.
think, yeah, so that's an interesting duality of humans, isn't it? That
Exactly. Yeah. I think you mentioned before that, like, I think one reason why they're so appealing maybe is just
mm,
yeah, because you said, I think, lethality. I think
mm,
there's also I think like heroism. as
Yeah,
like portrayed in like Hollywood movies, right? See, like
sure.
the hero's got like the biggest and the best, most awesome gun, and
Yeah,
he's,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
winning and saving the day, and then like you don't
Come
think
on,
about,
Amador,
okay,
Amador-san. He's clearly a
exactly,
hero. Yeah.
right? So there's that sort of fantasization about
Mm.
that. And
Yeah.
I should be clear that I don't mean to say like, oh, is it really, okay morally to enjoy this toy, which is a representation of a killing machine. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying
Okay.
uh, that I think it's interesting to think about, if it's worthwhile to try to communicate that in the actual model
Mm.
kit, and
Mm.
even how you would even approach that. Because I mean, like, even when you see like, and sometimes you see this, and this is kind of two different things I'm going to bring up here at the same time. Number
Okay.
one is like the taboo that I think exists. I've never really seen this come
Mm.
up in like Gundam modeling. I've never seen it come up, but I've seen it come up when I was in Chile at the contest there. Somebody who had done an armor model had included, like, in their diorama there was like a guys like next to the tank, and if I remember
Mhm,
correctly, they
mhm.
were like putting bodies into a grave or something like that, and like
Right,
me and the
right,
other
right.
judges had to have like a discussion about that. Is that like, so I guess in like armor modeling, that's a kind of taboo thing if you really should actually show like that level of violence.
Mm. Mm.
Um,
I remember
but
that. I remember I think you shared it or showed something. I remember seeing
maybe,
something about that model show and that exact
mm,
example. Yeah, yeah.
maybe. So yeah, I mean, like, does that uh, taboo, you know, is that something that exists? I think some people might be hearing about this for the first time and be like, I never really knew that that was kind of like not okay to do, like, in the modeling world. So like just the
It's
existence of
not
that.
been shown. Yeah,
Yeah.
all these years. And I hope this doesn't I just want to throw a little bit of context there. Did did we visit the museum there in Shizuoka together, the Tamiya Museum of the Artworks?
No, no.
Okay, I wasn't sure whether it was you and me, but the initially
Mm,
uh Takani-san, who was doing the box art for Tamiya for
mhm,
the armor modeling, but he was doing Gundam at the same time. That's why they're
mhm,
so similar and good, but
mhm,
it's a good example for it. That of course they were never showing they showed people in the Gundam artwork,
mhm,
mostly for scale,
mhm,
but the early versions of the Tamiya box art included people and
mhm,
occasionally casualties.
mm,
And Tamiya-san, Mr. Tamiya,
mm,
he flipped out
mm,
and had them repaint new sanitized versions,
mhm,
which were artistically speaking were far inferior. The other ones were
mm.
powerful.
Yeah.
They were really good, and it was borderline not so scary, but more of thought provoking.
Like something you would see in a museum or something, right?
Yeah, they totally
Yeah.
were. So it was quite a good thing, and I I remember discussing this with some of the older gentlemen, the Japanese gentlemen
Mm,
who were there, and they were saying how they also really liked that too, but it was
mm,
more, well, Tamiya is a business. They had to project the toy image more.
mm,
So I think we've hit an interesting time, Zach. You're very correct because,
mm,
well, the last months, say 6 months, have really reshaped our world again and brought
mm,
back memories and made things different and real, haven't they? So,
mm.
uh,
For
yeah,
sure.
man, it's big, and maybe it's something that will be questioned again. You're right. Yeah, you're right.
Well, just maybe
What did you
some
guys do, by the way? What
in
was the
that,
judgment
if I
in
remember
Chile?
correctly, I believe the entry was disqualified,
Okay,
just because I have no experience with like armor modeling, whatever. So
mm,
I was not even the primary judge for that one.
okay.
Like, we were separated by category, kind of who was going to judge based on expertise, right? But
You were doing
still,
ships, right?
of course, yes, ships and miniatures.
Right, right.
But actually, I was the judge for the miniature category. uh,
Nice.
it was like mecha modeling and miniatures. I think what was where I
Yeah, that
was.
makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, but no. So, I mean, as far as I know, from my limited understanding, that is a kind of thing that you just kind of don't do if you want to like be
Mm,
taken seriously.
mm,
And I'm not saying, well, that needs to change and everybody needs to start putting, like blood and bodies and stuff in there. Or I don't think that's necessarily uh, right either. But, you know,
what
is
I
there any
predict is
value in that,
I
in like
predict
trying to
somebody will.
communicate that, you know?
Somebody's gonna win. I think somebody will do it really well,
Hmm.
is what will happen,
Hmm.
because it's too it's too present now for us to
Hmm.
ignore it. And
Hmm.
by what we're doing, I mean, like you and I are thinking and talking about this. So
Hmm.
I believe at one of the big shows, somebody somebody with a good brand name,
Hmm.
because that will be important for them to get past it, to survive it.
Hmm. Hmm.
If it's somebody new who we don't know of,
Hmm.
it's going to be easier to shunt it aside, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But
Yeah.
if somebody famous
Right.
does it, and does it really well in a thought-provoking way,
Hmm.
and I believe there's people out there with the talent to do it, of course.
Sure. Yeah.
That could be the tipping point, but then it needs to be thought of, how much do we applaud this? Because do we in what you choose as a winner in a competition is how you then guide the genre
Sure.
going
Yeah.
forward, isn't it? Because
Mm.
people will emulate the winners.
Of course. Yeah.
So yeah, it's a super important question, isn't it?
Mm.
I It would be very challenging. I really wouldn't I wouldn't want that job right now to be judging because that's probably the category that can go really real, can't they? The armor
Mm.
folks and dioramas.
Well, actually,
Just
I mean, now that you've been
mm,
saying what you're saying about that, I mean, like,
mm,
about someone who's got some level of notoriety within the community, like doing that in a contest. Actually, I immediately thought of Matteo Nobili, who's from
yeah,
Italy.
yeah.
He was one of when I went last time I was in Japan was for the last GBWC that they had there. He was the
Mm.
winner there from Italy. He did this amazing diorama scene, and he
Oh,
has a
that was
ton of
Mateo's. I didn't
yeah.
realize that see, we
You
talk a
know
lot
him?
about we talk a lot he's really good at machining Krieger too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, so I know he also does Gunpla because
Hmm.
doesn't he runs the shop Bomber Cat, right?
Yep. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, it's really looks like so I'd really love to go to his shop.
Hmm.
But that's so cool that it's Mateo. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah. So I think like he was the first person that came to mind. Like I know like the
Mm,
experience and like the expertise that he has. I think like
mm,
that
mm.
he would be someone who I think who could pull off something like that if that was something that he chose to tackle in his work. Um,
In
just
which
as
genre
someone who
though?
came to
What do you
mind.
think he would try it with?
Um,
See, because I only know
yeah,
I know him as a sci-fi dude. I don't know. Does
mhm.
he also do uh,
Gunpla.
sci-fi Gunpla? Yeah, Gunpla's the big one for sci-fi.
Well, of course, yeah, and that's how
Yeah.
I know him
Okay,
is
okay.
through his work in Gunpla. But um, his was quite unique in that
Mm,
he did. I know in that entry that was at GBWC
mm,
before, and I know the
mm.
entry that he's currently working on now that he just started on. He's primarily using the UC hard series kits, which are 1/35th scale. So
Ah,
they're
okay.
primarily like focused around the human aspect of it because that's the scale of it.
That's
So
if it goes, that's gonna be the scale, isn't it?
yeah,
Because, if you go any bigger,
yeah. I
well,
think then it would maybe be too focused in on that, right?
mm, mm.
Yeah. 1/35th, I think, yeah, really good enough that you can have an entire ambiance of the
Right,
entire
right, right.
scene, right? Not that it needs to be like a whole like city block or anything, but
Mm, 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 mm.
enough space. Yeah, 120 or anything larger than that is getting quite personal.
It gets quite personal, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
For
Plus the
sure.
skill level required to do it,
Mhm.
but,
Yeah.
yeah, and
Yeah.
it's thankfully, it's
Mm.
outside of my skill range, so
Mm.
I don't wanna
Yeah,
not
of course.
knocked out vehicles I can do,
Mm.
but I would find it very difficult to, from sorry to make this about me,
No.
but just from my scaredy cat perspective,
Mhm.
I'll be honest, I don't think I'm not the guy to do that.
Mm.
Uh, I got a kid. I got a family. I got too much to risk. I feel right, and
Yeah.
I've seen the wrath of the hobby world. Come on, let's mention it.
Mm.
Let's mention it. The AK incident with
Sure.
that
Yes.
that really awful. Like I don't know the story behind it, but from what I've heard,
Yeah.
it feels like to me without. I've never looked at the finished product. I kind of just don't want to know about it, man. But to me, it felt a little poor taste at the time.
Mm. Yeah.
But I have heard from the owner of the company. He explained it. He mentioned it in such a way that he wanted it to be that thing, that Saving
Mm.
Private Ryan moment. Whether he
Mm.
pulled it off or not, it's not my place to judge.
Mm.
But I couldn't help but feel that it was perhaps in a little bit poor taste.
Yeah.
I that's why I'm quite nervous or scared about trying to go in that direction
Of course.
because
That's why I think it's so challenging. That's why I
yeah,
wanted
yeah,
to.
yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, because there's been a number of incidents. There was the incident I mentioned in Chile, and there was that
Mm,
incident you're talking about with, which I only vaguely remember. I don't remember in great detail, but I do remember what you're
mm,
talking about with AK. It was something related to World War II specifically, and
yeah.
Holocaust or something like that, right?
I took a big hit. Like
Yeah.
my bit, if I may, is it wrong for me to call it my business?
No.
Because I mean, it is now.
Yeah.
I need it for us to eat, so it's
Mm.
my business.
Yeah.
But I took a really big hit on it too because of
Mm.
my association with them at the time.
Sure.
I had a number of people angry at me saying you should be dropping your
Yeah.
association with them. I
That's.
mean,
I mean.
I am a little distanced now. I mean, I'm not working with them. I no longer
Yeah.
have an active working relationship with them.
Mm.
I hope I'm friendly with them, but that one was a bit hard because I'd never
Yeah.
heard of the project, and
Mm.
suddenly people saying, "So, are you going to drop
Mm.
your project with them?" And it's like I'm already 2 years into a 3-year project. I've
Yeah.
already taken the money. We already ate it. The kid got new shoes.
Mm.
I can't just dump this, guys, even
Yeah.
if you're really angry with them. And
Mm.
mine's a happy sci-fi book.
It's
There's
a tough.
no
I mean, I knew at the time that would be a tough position for you to be
It
in.
was,
Yeah.
it was, it was, and I
Yeah.
had some
For sure.
people actively going after me
Yeah. I know.
on social media. You
Mm.
would have seen some, right?
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
it was completely out of hand how personal their attack was on me. I
I
gotta
think
cry
so.
for a
Yeah.
moment. Their attack
Yeah.
was personal on me, even though I had never heard of the project. The
Yeah.
first time I heard of it was when it blew up, and I was just like,
Yeah.
"Wow." And the first thing I thought was, "That doesn't sound like a smart move." But,
Yeah.
yeah, I got quite a bit of anger about that, and I was like, "Guys, I got no idea. I'm just doing a sci-fi thing." It's all
That's
about
why. I mean, like I said, it's been
mm,
like this series of incidents, which is kind of like
mm,
got me just thinking about this as a topic, and like,
mm.
um, yeah, I think I would agree from what I can remember of the incident. Yeah, I think it was in poor taste, but at the
It's in
same
the
time,
timing. The timing is everything when you're
that's
trying
true
to
too.
if you're trying to Saving Private Ryan something, your
Mm.
timing, of reading the is it called the gestalt? The feeling of the time?
I
The
don't know. Yeah.
you gotta be able to read what
Mhm.
people are ready for and what the next move is, and that's the risk component.
I
Um,
yeah, I think, like,
mm.
for me, the thing that was more in poor taste was that just, like, how it was presented. I mean, like, it's totally different from if
Hey,
that was
hey, hey, we're exciting, sexy Spanish things. Whoa.
right, if
The
it's like,
the marketing often
advertising, yeah.
right, right, right.
You're
They
if you're
they
selling a
should
product.
that
Yeah,
was a really bad call.
yeah.
I wouldn't say anything else. I don't know about the quality of
Mm,
the project, but you have to market it differently, don't you? It
yeah.
should be a lot more somber and respectful. But again, I didn't get even super deep into it. I was
Mm,
so busy with
right. Yeah,
McLoving sci-fi that I didn't
yeah.
have much chance to look sideways, and I was
Mm,
horrified by it because
yeah,
I was nervous. That's
sure.
kind of one of those cancel culture moments that can come up in your career that could
Yeah,
could kill you off, right?
yeah.
And they were after me like I had bacon in my pockets. It's like,
Mhm.
guys, this is absolutely has nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Wow. He's like, please don't blame me for this. The problem was, right, I was the only name
Yeah,
and
that people
that
knew.
they knew that
Yeah.
had any kind of tie-up with the company and
Mm,
brand at the time.
mm,
And yeah, that was it. They
yeah,
knew me. They knew Lincoln Wright, and I was like, "Guys, I got nothing to do with it." They didn't even pitch
mm,
me that product.
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, it's just the kind of thing, and we've been, I mean, like on the topic as a whole, I mean, we've been kind of focusing on like, like violence, gore, and that type of thing, I think primarily. But I mean, it's not even only limited to that as far as just like the portrayal of the real side of war. I mean, there's also like the loneliness, sadness, loss, these kind of expressions of emotion that are just really difficult, I think, to portray in a model kit. And like, how do you do that in a convincing way?
That one's been more common and popular over the years on the Japan side. So I was not as exposed to armor modeling in the West until much more recently. I mean, not, but still, like I'd say like 8 years maybe or so, 10 now maybe. But the Japan way of doing it, because you can imagine these would be guys who were at least 10 to 20 years older than myself. So they were growing up through the rebuild time after Second World War. And Japan's one of those countries absolutely devastated through war. So, they have quite a different perspective on it. But their way of dealing with it, and like you said, loneliness and various aspects were like that, was it did become quite the cliche. And then I saw the cliche move from armor modeling over to sci-fi. Would be the very what's the word for it again?
Like somber,
Aryan. Is it the word Aryan? I know you got to be careful how you use that word, but the beautifully Aryan soldier. And you know how that look has become quite fetishized over the years. Excuse me. So broken English.
The Tabs is scrolling in the background.
Tabs. Oh. Tabs, you actually crawled right in camera. It would have been faster to just zoom across. Oh, that's gold. Okay, you're out of camera now. Did you want to get past without being in shot? Dude, speed is your friend. Speed.
Just jump.
Yeah, Tabs, you're out of shot now, so you can jump up and walk if you want. Now this is going to go viral. I'm going to be like that. Remember that dude who was in Korea? And
yes.
The kids came in.
Yes.
Tabs, do you remember that video we really like with the groovy kids come in when the dad's doing an interview? You totally just did that.
In there.
I didn't even notice. Oh man, Tomoe is laughing hysterically.
Yeah. That video though, I mean, that video is crazy, and like knowing how Korean moms are, it's so exactly right. Like the mom person there calls them out.
Tomoe probably might have reacted very similarly as well. Yeah. Especially because it was at the beginning, and they didn't realize you could get away with the whole Zoom thing, and how it was such a thing, wasn't it? And the mum being horrified. Oh, the kids are in there. And trying to get low under the camera. It just put her more into focus. Yeah. Just like my daughter did now. Even though I've told them, so guys, just go back and forwards as much as you need. I need to put this out there for the internet,
so
right?
People know.
Yeah, I was like, and like Tomoe has been like hiding in the bedroom. And I said, there's no reason for that, sweetie. I mean, you can't even see that end of the table. That end of the table. I'm like, just go backwards and forwards, make noise. It's cool. I mean, not too much, but
people understand that you live in a house, right?
Yeah. It's gonna be I'm not that kind of awful white dad. I'm a different kind. So yeah, that was funny. And it was just how long she looks now, caterpillaring across the floor. Classic Tabs. The butterfly on the finger thing. And I can't spin. Yeah, like that one. It's always the beautified. I'm not sure how to say that one, but I think you follow what I mean. That it's always the beautified Aryan soldier, because our Asian friends, they would see them as this. They paint them like
the heroic.
The heroic dude, right? And he's got the beautiful bum part, blonde hair, and they're standing there, and they've got a butterfly has just landed on my finger. And while they're eating bread,
innocence and among this like terrible, that's right.
Here's some fresh Parisian, countryside bread and cheese that I just stole.
Mm.
So yeah, that kind of thing became very ubiquitous, and so then that even came all the way over to Maschinenkrieger. So they'd have the dude out of the suit standing there and chocho. That's Japanese for butterfly. So we would start giggling about that quite a bit. There was even a pretty recent one by a really nice modeler. Gosh, I know her by sight, but I can't remember her formal name through which her publications would have been seen. But she was featured. She did this beautiful diorama of a camel model up on a hill, and it's got the pilot with the cha-cha. Dakota, man, everything's flipped, so I can't.
I know, yeah. Always, I can never do it right the first time.
Right, you gotta judge by it. But so that was one of them. That kind of thing, the trying to deflect the reality of war, and somehow put something beautiful to it. So I see that now with the hyperrealism being mixed. I'm seeing some of the guys I know who are top spec armor modelers are making some incredible realistic looking things. That's why I was wondering how it might do for Russian tank sales, and they're making them. But I'm curious to see how this evolves. So it was very pertinent to your topic. I wasn't sure which way you were going to go with this, whether it was the realism, so what sort of detailed chipping we need to do versus the realism of the horror, the realism of what we're doing.
Well, that's why I mentioned that earlier, that I think you've talked a lot about in your content the realism as far as like modeling techniques of simulating realism in a scale model. But yeah, I'm talking more of this atmosphere, realistic,
right?
How to portray a realistic atmosphere.
If I can mention it too, it's something that, gosh, maybe it's wrong to say excited, but earlier in my career, like I was joking about with the podcasts, when you're doing podcasts, they alter your content because you get used to talking longer. So you stretch my videos out. And sorry about my long videos, guys. I made some nicer, shorter ones recently too. But I liked to, earlier with some of my Maschinenkrieger vignettes, I was trying to portray them as a lull in the setting of the war. So it was everything would be operating at a frenetic pace, but rather than show it directly, it was more of the absence of that should make it more clear. So there was a couple that I felt personally I really liked were there's two snow camo guys on a hill, and I just called it uphill both ways. I was just trying to show the exhaustion that soldiers would probably go through when exposed to something like that. So I'm really hoping to get back to more of showing that, more of a visceral feeling to things, because so the FAQ, Sci-Fi FAQ, it's purely a technique book. I mean, you can. It didn't seem the right format, and I was working on that for 3 years. So it doesn't seem the right format to be storytelling. It's more about product shilling. Oh,
sure.
But yeah, I mean that's just how that works. So going back to that and trying to show the horror, the exhaustion, that kind of thing, but also trying to do it in a way that's pleasing and doesn't show it too directly. I for myself personally, I feel that going too directly to showing the actual horror doesn't feel right. It was more of trying to show that gap in between. But that's not saying there's not that opportunity for other modelers. I just, like I said, it's difficult to judge where that line is, isn't it?
Yeah, because and I think it's very different. Because we talked about scale before, it's actually a really good point. Like, because if it's a Gundam model or something that's like 100, even 144, it's such a totally different scale that I think that just adds so much more of a challenge to it to try to portray anything like that at that scale. But I mean, you see a lot. all sorts of dioramas, and like even without a diorama or a vignette or anything like that, even just
Mm,
people just doing like their battle damage, whether it's be something
mhm,
as
mhm,
just basic weathering or like actual like physical damage to that suit, but like how that would actually affect like
mm,
its
mm.
its operation, or even like the effect that that would have on the pilot that's like inside this thing that just
Yeah.
that had its arm blown off or whatever people have done with the model kit.
Mm,
It's
mm,
really
mm,
hard to
mm.
see that. And but I think your point that you made earlier on about, you know, Koyakama-san asking you, do you like tanks or do you like tank toys?
Toy tanks, yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, I think that's a, you know, really good point that, you know, when someone's making a battle damaged Gundam, as like we would kind of refer to it, something like that,
Mm,
you know, they're not, I feel like most people are probably not thinking like, okay, this is like, I'm really trying to show this as like a representation of like what this Gundam's been through. They're just
mm, mm.
more just thinking, oh, I'm trying to make my Gundam toy look cool by showing what kind of effects I can make that look realistic and interesting
Yeah.
visually, rather than trying to express any sort of like emotion of like
Mhm,
what's
mhm.
the reality of what they're showing in the model
Yeah,
kit.
yeah. It's one of those things that it's very high level to pull off.
Mm,
But then again, how do we get to that level of storytelling
mm,
without making some bad ones first? So
sure.
that's why I, my biggest take would be though would I would never judge somebody for it. I if somebody explained their story to me about how I wanted to show this and this was my
Mm,
thinking behind it,
yeah,
I'm always positive for that
yeah,
because it's just it's human expression, isn't it?
yeah,
And
yeah, totally.
we need to be getting to that level to pull it off to get to
Mm.
that. I mean, you can't nail those sort of looks first off, can you?
No, yeah.
I mean, you got to be going through all of the steps, haven't you? Your basic builds, your clean builds, your uh,
Mm,
and aesthetic weathering. I kind of need a better word for it, a hyper detailing of a point of a type.
mm,
And I understand they're kind of divergent skills from a certain point of view of the super detailing via increased visual detail through panel lining,
mm,
paneling. What do you call it? Panel scribing.
scribing, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Adding all of the, adding more and more visual detail, but
yeah.
still keeping it clean and precise
Mm,
versus super detailing done through the addition of, say, environmental effects
mm,
and then and battle damage effects. I
mm,
mean, they're all related, though, aren't they? And we
mm.
can
Yeah.
fit them all on one model, but encompassing all of those skill sets in one person is quite a challenge, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Actually, one build that came
Mm,
to mind that I think is a pretty good example, not exactly what we're talking about, but kind of along
sure.
those lines. And maybe you've seen it. I think it came out in a publication, I want to say last year, may have been before that, but I think it was like, it was a scene of like in like a back alley. There was a guy, I think it was maybe 1/35th scale, I guess, or
Mhm.
it was with a new spotter kit where it was like a dark alley and there's a guy like walking home at night with his bento box and there's like a new spotter like up like behind him. Have you seen that build?
I bel so
It
I'm
was in a book.
picturing a couple that so there was
Maybe like that.
first I was thinking there was the really good noise spotter out in the field, and it was the Police version, so it wasn't that one, and
Mm,
it's, I think I saw a recent one that was, it sounds exactly like that, but with a, ducks sorry, one of the so I was thinking Dachshund, but that's a particular name for it, of the Grosserhund.
mm,
But, this one, though, it sounds super familiar, but
mm.
I'm not 100%. I know. Do you know the name of the artist, or was it?
No, I can't remember. Basically, it was not showing like anything necessarily like the emotions that we're talking about, but it
Mm,
was
mm,
just kind of, there was like a sense of dread or kind of like
mm.
suspense that was like, oh, what's this like huge thing? And it's like a dark alley. And I think a lot of that is how the model is presented, how it's photographed actually
Yes.
as well.
Okay.
It's not like in like a bright studio. It's photographed very dark because it's supposed to be like a night
Mhm,
scene, and
mhm,
you almost don't even see the news spotter or whatever it is there, like kind of hovering up,
Right.
and it's like behind the guy and like the alley. There's what do you call it, the stairway, like a fire escape, and it's like kind of like behind the fire escape, so it's like
Cool.
kind of back in there. You almost like when you look at the kit at first, you almost didn't even see it, but then like you see like the light of it up there, and yeah, it's a
That's
really interesting.
perfect, isn't it? That's really
Mhm.
good. Bringing out the ominous feeling of
Yeah.
these giant horrible robots.
Hmm. And I feel like
Mm,
it's interesting you mentioned about the dachshund or like the
mm.
different variations of that. I think that's a particular one that I think would work really well for this, just because of the design of it and it being like something that's unmanned as well, sort of similar like to the Matrix kind of thing. And you have these just autonomous robots that are just coming to kill you, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah, there's a scene in the sketch. No, it's not the sketchbook. I'm sorry. The one of the BDs. They're called the ones full of the comic strips.
Mm,
And yeah, it was a very foreboding scene of a uh, one of the suits hiding underwater in the ruined city,
mm,
being hunted by one of those AI units
mm,
above the water.
mhm,
And yeah, so dude, it was like that. That's very dark,
mm,
uh, very ominous and scary.
mm. Yeah,
So
foreboding, right?
foreboding.
Yes.
So yeah, foreboding. So and that's the kind of look that appeals to me a great deal. So
Mhm,
that's um, going more overt than that.
mm,
I understand, like many artists will want to do that. So I
mm,
just want to point out, I really don't have an issue with it. Like I've seen some
mm,
cool ones with. So once you get up to that 1/16th, 1/20th scale,
mm,
if a suit gets its arm blown off,
mhm.
so does the pilot.
Yeah.
So I've seen that kind of thing. I've seen it
Uh,
handled pretty well. It's
mm,
just I that's not something I'd probably want
mm.
to go for myself. But uh,
Yeah. For something
but
like
it's
that specific example, I feel like how do you do that in a way
mm.
that doesn't just come off cheap? Where I think again, I think it just kind of
You
has
just
to
have to
go
have a really high level of skill. Yeah.
into how it's presented,
Mm.
right? Because if
Mm.
that's the thing that you notice first about it, then it's gonna come off cheap and be like, it feels
Look,
like that's what the artist wanted you to see right away. As look at
so
how
I've seen one.
it's
I'm gonna name him because I love his work. His name's Paul Keefe,
uh,
and does beautiful work. I love his take on Machine and Krieger. And he had done one of the. I'm pretty sure it was with one of the old helicopter body suits, like the
uh,
PKAs, Pekaha, they called it.
mm,
And it was one where the arm was removed through the violence of an explosion. It was
uh,
beautiful. It was really really well done. So I didn't feel any cheapness or anything for it.
mm,
It definitely felt shocking though. I was more intrigued by it, like, wow, I wonder
mm,
how he did that.
mm,
But so it wins for the shock value,
mm,
definitely. Uh, but because I would imagine the largest proportion of your audience are probably into the Gundam property most,
mm,
the highest one. The for competitions for that one though, um, these are the kind of ideas that I throw out there for your personal builds.
mm,
But if it was something because hey, GBWC is back.
mhm.
It's I'd be wary of being the one to test that
Yeah, sure.
with the Japanese judges because they have a
Mm.
very strong commercial component to your
Oh, yes, yes, of
the
course.
entries being chosen. So I would say they will be much more conservative about that, despite
Mm,
what's happening in the world. They're going to err on the side of caution and restraint
yeah.
and being careful about it. So uh, I wouldn't choose a big competition like that to unleash your idea of reality just
Mm,
yet. I
mm.
mean, but now that I've said it, I'll be wrong, and somebody will clean up because they'll do something beautiful based on that.
Who
It's
knows?
just, yeah, yeah. It's one of those things, isn't it? But
Mm.
I,
That's one
mm,
particular contest that I think it would be very dangerous for the reasons you're talking about. Whereas if
mm,
it's like your local IPMS,
mm,
show, which has like a sci-fi category, which is like a quarter or less than a quarter of the show in general, right?
mhm,
Doing it at some place like that is somewhere where I think you have a lot more
mm.
leeway to get away with something like that, where it's less commercialized, like you're saying.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd feel bad if I talk somebody into thinking this is how I'm going to blow GBWC away. I'm going to do this
Hmm.
one now. And it's poor old grandpa with his legs missing or something. I'd be like, yeah,
Right. But no,
too soon.
there's so many things that I think like are just missing, and I just don't think that there's any really good way, at least, but I feel like
Mm,
I guess this is a good thing to talk about too, because maybe this will get people's minds thinking about it. And like
yeah. Yeah.
we kind of know the range of what can be done in our genre, right? It just in sci-fi modeling, we know like, yeah, you can go like hyper detail with the weathering, hyper detail with like the physical details and these things. So
Mm,
like these are
mm,
kind of like the extent of the skills, and like
mm,
we know what can be done with like a really high level diorama, but like, and if you ask someone to like, okay, what's something that you think that you could do new that hasn't been done before? I think it's really difficult to come up with something now, because there's so many, like everything feels like everything's been done, but there's things that, I guess it's hard to imagine how to do it, but it's not really been explored that much, in
mm,
it's
mm.
just
Yeah,
because
true,
of its
true, true, true.
difficulty. So I mean, maybe discussing it more, and like, more people experimenting, maybe trying and failing inevitably, of
Mm,
course,
mm.
will make it. And I'm not saying, my dream is someday GBWC where there's not an entry that doesn't have the blood coming out of a robot or something, right?
Mm,
Certainly not. But um and like I said before, it's not even necessarily only the violence aspect of it, but there's no other
mm,
much
mm.
more aspects of, what it means to be, wielding a weapon, uh,
Right, right, right.
as a model
Yeah.
kit. Mm.
If
Oh, really quick,
sure.
hold that thought though, because I just wanted to also mention another
Mm.
thing, that I think was really important to me, my thought process about this idea too, was a
She can
book.
move quickly as well.
Yes, which I barely even saw her that time. So there you go.
Hmm.
Uh, there's a book which is by Christopher Hedges, which I don't really know if I really want to, put too much of a plug. Like, check him out, because he's got lots of views about different things that I don't necessarily agree with about everything about
Okay.
him, but he's an interesting author. He does write a lot about war, actually. So he has a
Mm,
book,
mm.
that I read years and years ago, but it's titled something like, I think it's like What Everyone Should Know About War, basically.
Oh, okay.
And it's a very detailed, nonfiction book, um, where it's basically just all these like just facts. It's basically just a long list of facts, essentially, about like
Okay.
what exactly does this caliber bullet like do to
Ooh, okay.
something, right? These type of things, like what is it actually like to be in this environment day after day
Mm,
after day?
mm,
What
mm,
are the real effects that has on a person who is in like,
mm,
uh, in a war situation in the desert for months and months and months? What are
mm,
the,
mm,
the
mm,
real effects of that? So it's a really interesting book, just to hear all these like facts. Some of them gruesome, but like that's the reality of it. So
mm.
that that I'm sure was also kind of another thing that came
Wow,
played a
okay.
part into kind of getting to this point of where we're having this discussion now.
Mm,
Uh, that's a quite interesting read. If anybody wants to check it out.
mm.
Sorry, you were gonna say something before I
No,
remembered that.
the if I were to see more, I
Mm-hmm.
was just kind of thinking about what would I like to see,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I like to see the positive aspects of humanity portrayed against such a
Yeah.
backdrop. That kind of thing does appeal to me, perhaps. Like
Mm.
I I've always liked those. Most of these are going to be vignettes because to really be telling this level of story, you've got to have a couple of elements
Mhm.
interacting, haven't you? So the I like the ones where there's one person helping another.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, thought those ones were good, but I have also I've noticed an increase in. I mean, it's always been a very popular theme It's the verses theme, one versus another.
Mm,
Uh, some of them going further and calling it like a David Goliath kind of thing, but it's
mm.
they'll often have them at an angle,
Sure.
and
Yeah.
it'll
Exactly
be
as I'm imagining it. Yeah.
yeah, and so those ones are quite a powerful way to get it more across that it's a thing that
Mm,
happens and could be realistic.
mm,
I just think it's a powerful theme that has been used all through art through the ages. The
mm,
uh, it probably has probably a different name in English, but
mm,
they used to call it the vases, and
mm,
it's one character, generally speaking, defeating another or somehow kind of locked in close mortal combat,
mm.
and
It's
that
very
one
true. I
gets
mean, like,
across.
what's that famous statue of? Is it just the Michelangelo or something? I
Sure,
guess I don't
sure.
know. With the David and Goliath, is it that?
That's one. That's a perfect example of them. Yeah,
Yeah. Now that you
yeah,
mentioned that,
and
but even like yeah, like paintings and stuff, like
mm,
hundreds of years ago,
mm,
portraits of like maybe like soldiers or something, where of course they would have been in the style of being like perfectly clean and they're just
right,
wearing their soldier outfits and they're like marching off to battle or something like that and
right.
looking very stoic,
Yeah,
not very
exactly. So
realistic.
the kind of things that we're asking ourselves now,
Mm,
it's all based on concepts that humanity has.
mm,
I don't know whether we could say it been at odds over the years with, but has
mm,
been very aware of.
mm,
So, like even going back to like you were saying, hundreds of years ago, like the classic, like Michelangelo or
mm,
in Da Vinci's work,
mm,
they would have the same kind of thoughts about it too, wouldn't they? How much
mm,
can I really put into this?
mm,
How realistic can I make it?
mm.
Uh, there were some of the paintings would have been battle depictions. Some of them were religious depictions.
Sure.
And how realistic could they make them?
Mm,
Uh, because certain characters, based on just on religious text, I don't want to get on on some tangent about this one. I
yeah.
don't know a lot about it, but some
Mm,
of them had been grievously injured.
mm,
So how realistic were they to portray that at that time
mm,
to people? The people, what was
mm.
their exposure to that level of reality at that time? So,
That I
mm,
mean, well, as far as like an audience to the piece, I mean, I'm sure like at that
mm,
time, you have a painting in a museum that a couple hundred people coming through
mhm,
are going to
mhm.
see. It's
Right.
it's very different from like where we're at now.
Right, right, right.
Hundreds of people from dozens of countries are going to see,
Well,
whatever we put online now.
realistically, they can be the numbers can get quite high quite quickly,
Mm,
especially if you're outrageous. But
mm,
yeah, like many people can see these works, so
mm.
they need to
But
kind of fit into those accepted norms or push them.
yeah, and
Mm,
it's really the same issue, like going back, like you're saying, to art through the ages, how it
mhm.
portrays reality, and like
Yeah,
even if you see like the more like a painting of something that is quite realistic, it seems like, oh wow, that's a really raw portrayal of
mhm.
something very realistic, or even like war photography from like World War II or something.
Right,
Um,
right, right, right.
Even when you're looking at something like that, what does it take to get you as the viewer to really kind of feel like, wow, like
Mm,
that's
mm.
really really like tragic with what you're seeing,
Yeah, yeah.
rather than just like that's a very interesting piece of art.
Mm. See, and our exposure level
Mm,
has really been ratcheted up because
yeah.
I mean the first televised war
Hmm.
they say was like the Vietnam
Hmm.
conflicts.
Hmm.
Up to what we can see now, our access to it now is probably uh, the highest level of direct.
We kind of, I
From,
think, probably very quickly got
yeah,
desensitized
yeah,
to
yeah, 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 yeah. So that kind of thing, and how that
mm,
will reflect on art going
mm,
forward is interesting. We can't say it won't change us.
mm,
We can't, but our values though will be slower to change.
Mm.
So that is a tough one. It does make me think more though about I myself will be. Uh, it has been sobering. So
Mm.
since these things have happened, for example, I've been working on space stuff, which is it's nice in a way because it's a little further removed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, I did. I'm usually extremely apolitical. I prefer not to
Mm.
have anything into my work, but I'm making a space camel now
Mm.
for space theme of projects,
Mhm.
and I did base the pilot suit based
Mm.
on things that are happening now.
Mm.
I've kept it pretty oblique, but I mean, if you look
Mm.
at it, it's quite clearly it's a Ukrainian flag color
Mm.
on the pilot, and I just gosh, I don't feel I can do a lot to help these folks,
Mm.
but at least in thinking about it or making perhaps this very small gesture,
Mm.
at least it would help me in looking back to remember these times too and how I feel about it, which is quite
That's really tough. I mean,
yeah,
like you said,
yeah,
we don't want to. I mean, that's a whole other thing that we could get into. That's very,
yes,
you know,
yes,
it's borderline off topic, but yeah,
yeah.
how do you express, you know, support without it just being coming off cheap, right?
Mm, mm, mm.
You know, or support, or some kind
See,
of
and
acknowledgement, but then on the other hand, lack of
I'll never make
acknowledgement.
mention of it either when I show the work
Hmm.
professionally. I'm not going to mention it because
Yeah.
it's off topic,
Hmm.
but it's something for me personally as an artist at the
Hmm.
time
Hmm.
to feel it was correct to implement into the work.
Sure.
And I mean the suits are usually orange in the canon; they're always orange.
Mm.
So, but this time, why not?
Yeah.
Uh,
So people
I
who are
thought,
well deep into it will pick up
yeah.
on it easier than, just kind of your standard viewer. Sure.
Right, right. I felt just as a thing of respect too that it places it within a time frame too,
Mm.
uh, without being too overt. I don't think we should be. Uh, I don't think it's right for me to be overt about it. I've seen other artists do very provocative work,
Mm.
like flats, like a diorama done on a flat style,
Mm.
and it was like uh, a, a ballerina escaping from an apartment whilst it was partially exploding. It's
Mm.
amazing work,
Mm.
but it's the person, the artist themselves has a direct touch to it. Apparently, he knows the ballerina,
Ah.
so it was very, very direct,
Mm.
and so there was no cheapness involved there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's an interesting topic,
Yeah.
and I there's not one size fits all, is there? There's
Yeah.
a number of ways we can kind of look at it, and
And I think
mm,
that I didn't really think about this too much leading up to our conversation, but I did know this about you, was that
mm.
I knew from our previous conversations that you did have an interest in history, and all that.
Yes,
And so I think
very
that
much so. Yeah.
that is, now that I'm thinking about it, that is probably a good um, kind of background to have if it's something that you're interested in modeling. Like if
Mm.
you're listening to this conversation now and thinking, that's something that I might be interested to try to tackle something along those lines in my work.
Right, right.
Knowing about history and like being exposed to things that have happened.
As
I'm
an
sure it's
example,
important.
I'm sorry, I didn't want to
Mm.
cut you off. You
Yeah.
good?
Yeah.
Just to make it very Gundam and Gunpla specific, there
Mm.
was one of the shows that I translated for Kawaguchi
Mhm.
Meiji was he gave us a fantastic talk. It was right on topic for this one, I think,
Mhm.
in that he was showing how the Yamato battleship,
Mhm.
Yamato and sister ship Musashi,
Mhm.
during their operational life, how they could be changed and how they were upgraded and altered,
Mm.
uh, and he
Yeah.
was then showing an analogy for that, how you could then apply something similar in
Mm.
make believe on our side
Mhm.
to the to a Zaku, and showing
Mm.
how well Zaku's operational life, even if it
Mhm.
was only, even if we only say that it was a certain amount of years in our version
Mm.
of reality,
Mhm.
that it could still be upgraded and changed a great deal because of these various things happening. And he drew
mm,
out, obviously, he's an expert
mm,
on the life cycle of both the
mm,
Musashi and Yamato battleships.
mm,
I mean, they're huge topics in Japan, but equating them,
mhm,
Japanese real navy, real battles, real stuff,
mm,
to Zaku was actually fascinating. So
mm,
it gave me a real insight into the way that masters like to think about their work
mhm,
in going to that level of reality based on history.
mm,
So that's perhaps something of the real takeaway for me as a modeler,
mm,
would be to follow, Kawaguchi Meijin's example
mm,
of using uh, concepts in history, being aware of it, being
mm.
respectful to it, and paying a somewhat of a homage to it by then translating it
Yeah.
over to our sci-fi work.
I think, like you mentioned before, where you said you've done a lot of work in the past where you're trying to show like the in-between moments, basically
Mhm.
where you're trying to tell this as much as you can of the story with the particular like single piece, based
Yes,
on what
yes.
you do with it. And like that, it's kind of similar like what you're talking about, like how you can do that with a Zaku by showing, whatever techniques you're putting into the build to tell the
Mhm, mhm.
story of how it's been upgraded, or how it's
Right,
been
right, right.
damaged, or what it's been through in terms of like the weathering and all that. And so I feel like
Mm.
that's definitely a good step in like what we're talking about.
See, and
Very important one.
if I and this was not done for me being, being sad and remorse about these
Hmm.
things. This was actually a kind of interest and excitement for me, because
Mm,
what it allowed me to do was to develop a narrative
mhm,
for that I do know and I'm very strong about. I know it's not real, but
mm,
for the sci-fi works, it enabled me to learn something from history and then transpose it across
mm,
as a narrative to bring some more life to these
mm,
sci-fi projects. So that's actually something that's something that I've grown over the publications too, which
mm,
I'm not meaning this as a plug, I swear, but because the first one, well, there was the depth of technique interaction, sci-fi FAQ. It's just about the techniques. They're not interested in backstory at all. So that's just a thing. That's how
mm,
it works. Mark 44, I was able to bring in more narrative.
mm,
Uh, so that was actually very
mm,
satisfying to work on, because, and the narrative of that story is more about how these projects were reflective of my real life at that time. Um, the topic doesn't come up often, but
yeah.
why choose Mark 44? Well, Mark 44 was a reflection and actually encompassed my life in
Mhm,
Australia, my new life, because it was the first one I made, first Machine and Krieger kit I made moving to Australia,
mm,
up until the first one that I made after finishing FAQ.
mm,
So that span of 4 models encompassed my entire new life in Australia outside of the
mm,
Japan studio.
mm,
So it was actually really cool to go through and kind of document that.
mm,
Um, Going a little bit further now, so the next one, without too many spoilers, is a lot. You can just look at my current work. There's a lot of space
mhm,
stuff. It's very space themed. So I'm able to flesh out one of the backstories, which is Operation Dynamo. You'll see it on some of
mm,
the kit boxes, and invent a new one. They've given me license to actually do that as well. So being able to, I think the reflection on reality and history gives us the ammunition, the knowledge to be able to take it apart,
mm,
reapply it onto um, increasing the enjoyment of our projects through actually making them feel more real in
mm,
that context of that that make believe universe, of course.
mm,
So I've got a project and a story to share, which is and of course it's tongue in cheek too, the dark side of the moon.
mhm,
Uh, Pink Floyd. Lots of people won't. You can't really see it, but well, the
mm,
idea was that one of the ways that I get enjoyment from adding realism
mm,
to the projects that I'm working on is to add narratives,
mm,
which it works a couple of ways, because it in building out a narrative, it kind of helps you with a little roadmap on the steps you might like to take on your model to get it looking similar. So it's not hard set. You don't have to have it completely done, like the narrative sorted before. But I tend to work like that. It helps me choose the colors and the age of equipment, which kind of gives me a little bit of a heads up on how far to go with like aging and different processes. Is it a really old suit or old mobile suit, or
and just to be clear, like for people that know what you're talking about like age isn't like how long the particular equipment's like been in use.
Yes.
Yeah, on the battlefield, or just
not how old or young the pilot is. No.
Right, or anything like that, or
it's
like
not that kind of ageism. It's a different
kid that came out 20 years ago versus a kid that came out 5 years ago. We're not talking about that, right?
Trying to stay with new stuff, mostly. I try to keep the builds pretty modern too, just so people have a better chance of getting hold of them if they wanted to make their own version and show me how I did it so wrong. So this is how you're supposed to do it, Link. That'd be cool. Okay. So so age is apparent. The how old it looks like it may have been used for it, because sometimes, right, we may have a suit that's first time in service, first time on a mission, but gets pretty beat up. I had a quick. I'll bring this back onto topic, I promise. But watching Lightyear just yesterday, that was really good, because they actually had a really dirty, beat up Buzz Lightyear. Buzz Lightyear. Hark, Buzz Lightyear. I call they gave a really cool example. The Pixar guys did such a great job. We had an example of a brand new Space Ranger suit that was literally just taken out of the box, taken out of the wrapping. And because of the mission that Buzz then needed to go through, it was actually beat up and made really dirty right off. Like literally 15 minutes out of the shrink wrapping. So spoiler for the show, I guess, but it was really cool. It made me think, wow, you could have something go from brand new to really, really beat up and weathered, as in terms of the burn effects and stuff from the environment, in a really, really short period of time. So that was cool. So going to watch the movie Lightyear with the family, that was work. That was work for inspiration purposes.
No, it actually could be kind of interesting, because like on the other hand, I feel like doing like, as far as like how long something's been in the field, or something that's fresh and new, if you were to do like a machine Krieger build, for example, really clean, I feel like most people would see that, and if I was doing it, I would be like, it doesn't feel right to do that. But
right.
Depending on the story that you want to tell with it, it does make sense that at some point it was like that. So
of course,
part of the story that you want to tell,
like Lightyear's suit in that example I said just before, I think he was only beat up face first. I reckon his back was probably still like shrink wrap version. So a friend, Brian Krieger, I heard I've been saying his name wrong apparently his family name is pronounced Krieger, but the friend that I heard it from, I don't know whether he was being messed with or not. So I don't know until I hear it directly from Brian. I'm hesitant to say, but he gave me that great advice like years and years ago when I was just asking about levels of weathering, because that was a big question for me. And he just said, well, try to pick out an interesting time in the life of that piece of equipment. Would it be most interesting to show something when it's brand new looking, or would it be useful to show it another time? So now this is another really nice, another way that our different genre modeling friends can inspire us, because that's how the historic folks will think about something, I guess. They'll try to place it during a specific battle. And that's why in this next project that I'm working on, the space-based one, and this ties into our conversation that probably got chopped up a little bit, in me bringing the reality to it, it's not just from the physical and painting style of weathering with the stuff. I've tried to go a step further and immerse them into a narrative. And by helping to bring the narrative alive, and that's the cool thing about a book, the publication format, is that you can have that on the page before they see all the pictures or on the same page kind of thing, to kind of, it's hard to get other humans to read. It's just a thing, right? I'm the same. Oh, pictures, cool. But then after I see the cool pictures, I will want to go back and read the story. And then you go, that's why he looks like that. So with that, our topic of realism now, I thought that was kind of a bit of an inside share from me, because, that's my fun with realism, is to go further with the narrative and make them match up. So just in case the discussion before,
I think it was fine.
It's good.
I think so.
So I've got two major stories to share. One of them is already existing, and some folks will have read about it in their kits, in the boxes. It's Operation Dynamo. So there's that one. But then I've got another one that I've invented for it called Dark Side of the Moon. And yes, there's totally a. Oh wow! I said it the first time really well before we got cut off, and then I had a mental blank. Pink Floyd, of course. Sorry, there it is. I'm back. So Pink Floyd kind of reference and a bit of a gag there, but also Sci-Fi lovers, you'll remember this one. Didn't they call one of the Transformer movies?
Yes.
Dark Side of the Moon, right?
I think it was called maybe just the Dark of the Moon or something.
Dark of the Moon. Yeah, maybe. I mean,
just as a kind of for multiple reasons, I'm sure, but yeah.
They have to be much more careful of copyright infringement.
Right, yeah. Yes.
Because this one is so unrelated. I mean, because this is recorded, I thought of the name first, probably mostly inspired by the Transformer thing, but just the concept of having a dark side of the moon.
Yeah, sure.
In reality, it's not a real thing, apparently, because it turns enough, and But of course, a preemptive strike by reconnaissance type and deep infiltration units before the major assault on a lunar base would require a special operations infiltration strike, right?
An element of surprise.
Yeah. So, and that's something we had never talked about before. We had the proper Operation Dynamo, which is the full assault on the moon. Surely there should be a preemptive strike in the dark to gain gain the initiative, advantage, and what have you. So so I'm introducing both of them, bringing that reality was really fun, exciting for me. It doesn't always have to be. Gosh, we got a little. I think I got a little bit sidetracked off the idea of reality being what's happening now. So, but instead, I've projected off into the future. But that can still be. It's a valid reality, isn't it?
Well, that's
from a certain point of view.
Yes. Thanks, Obi-Wan.
Right, from a certain point of view.
That was not lost on me. No, I think that
my respect for people instantly goes up huge. I mean, you're already super high, but even to get the old Obi-Wan references, dude, that's just, you're not the worst anymore.
Thank you.
You're up there with the best.
But I think that's brings up, actually there was something that I wanted to discuss kind of related to that, but that does also bring up a good point, which I think maybe will be good things for us to end. To wrap up this conversation, I have a couple of things to talk about. Number one is that it is in the future in sci-fi, and I think that's one of the reasons why I think this whole concept is difficult, is because we're dealing with something that's not real. I mean, no matter how realistic we make it, it is just not something that is real and exists in our universe. We're dealing with, science fiction. So
until we have that Galaxy Quest moment. Remember, the spaceship shows up and he goes, "It's all real."
Yes.
That was Tim Allen as well.
Speaking of Buzz Lightyear,
one of our topics, yeah.
Something I think that's one thing. Then the last thing then too is I think that it's maybe difficult. One of the reasons why it's difficult is because we're dealing with, you have one thing that you like whether it's like a diorama that includes multiple things in the diorama, but
Mhm,
essentially
mhm.
it's one thing that you have to portray something that I feel like it's much more easy, or it's easier to do if you have a multimedia. Like
Yes.
if you could have a model kit that also has a soundtrack playing with it that plays like emotional music, or like the
Yeah.
voiceover of like a woman's voice, like reading letters that her, lover wrote from the battlefield or something like that. If you
Right,
had
right,
some
right,
sort of
right.
multimedia element that you're able to do,
Mm.
um, or like you're saying, having multiple images in a book, where you have multiple images that you
Mm.
have the opportunity to tell a story through multiple images, also through like actual text backstory.
Yes.
These sort of different elements, other than just the model kit itself, is
Mm.
one way to
Because that's tough,
portray more of
because
that emotion.
your initial example was coming from being at a physical, like in-person model show, right?
Right. Yeah.
That's tough
Hmm.
because, well, you can't always control the lighting through which your work
Yes,
is being seen. So
that's
that
true.
can be tough because it can
Hmm.
feel completely out of context with a different kind of lighting,
Mm.
right? And then if you're gonna, it depends on your audience, right? But if you have the big wall of text, even if
Mm.
it's beautifully presented,
Mm.
there's not always an opportunity to have that included with your display.
Mm.
And even if you did, gosh, you know what it's like, even on the interwebs, when the
Mm.
text and the image are right there with one another, posted
Mm.
together as part of the same thing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Uh, how many people read?
Mm.
I mean, I'm guilty of it.
Of course,
You,
yeah.
yeah, because we get that visual input from the image, right? So I know everything already. I'm not going to read words,
Mm.
and I've already judged you. So that's one of the challenges we face, isn't it? But you're exactly right.
Mm.
If we have more supporting materials,
Yeah, various media
yeah,
elements
yeah,
coming into
yeah.
play at once.
Oh, totally, totally.
Here's, I think, maybe
Music would
what,
be powerful. You're right. Yeah.
for sure. Yeah, I think
Or if you
just
stood there with a tiny violin all day, and you're
telling
on a
this,
turntable too, so that you keep
narrating it, or
playing. Yeah,
having like
yeah.
some old guy there sitting next to your work, telling his
Right.
story as if like he was there. Like,
Did you see the campaign for Halo Believe?
yes, I
It's a
believe so. I
few.
think I know what you're
You
referring
believe?
to. Yeah.
Do you remember they did that fantastic? Yeah, I see what you did there. They had the diorama, and it was interactive, and they took us through stories, and they have actors with. It was very multimedia, and it was beautifully done.
I think maybe I remember that. Yeah,
Mm, mm.
I
So
remember
that
there
was
was something where
fantastic.
they
They
were in
made
like
it.
some sort of like museum kind of setting.
Yes,
Thing. Is
yes,
that right?
yes, yes.
Okay.
And so it
Okay.
was. We were descendants of these people who had come back, and we
Mm,
were paying our respects to the people who had fought for in that
mm,
battle that they were depicting
mm,
there. So that was, I think, their take on showing it as if to be real, despite it
mm,
being a future based sci-fi property.
mm.
It was beautifully done, I thought. Uh, they really went hard on it.
Well,
And
that's
then we get to go from that to the headshots, the shotguns, and the teabagging. So
teabagging
it's a
is
beautiful
actually,
transition.
yes, perfect. And all the beautiful. I mean, the thing that's almost probably the most comical thing, or just, I don't know, entertainment thing about Halo for me, is all the sound effects and everything of the aliens. So it's so good.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Um, but like speaking of museum, and like you're saying, like being able to be in the physical space, like at an exhibition or something, or a
Mm.
competition where you're able to be in the space, I think really maybe the most kind of, if this is the kind of direction you wanted to go with your model making work, it seems like probably a really good setting would be in like a proper like museum type, or just like art gallery kind of setting, where rather than like the
Wow.
actual model kit
Mm.
itself, maybe it's just like a photography exhibition where you have photographs of your model. Because then, like you mentioned about the light, when if it's just the model itself is there, you have to control the light. But if it's photographs of the model, then you've already done all that, and it's just photographs on the wall. Then you can also have some you know supporting audio playing there for people to listen to, and you can have your story just like an art piece, the little text
What a
block
great
there
idea, Zach. That's
next to that.
brilliant. That's genius. I really like that.
But
The
no, it's
I
yeah, something
you
that
know
isn't done, hasn't
I
really
could
done,
be
right?
so lucky as to produce
Hmm.
something like that. The
Yeah.
Right? I'd love to produce and share something
Mm.
like that with folks. Yeah, you're right. I think it would be fantastic to show them how you want them to be seen and
Mm.
see if others enjoy it. Wow,
Mm.
that's a really
Sort
good
of
idea.
like if you went to an art exhibition and it was like an
Hmm.
exhibition of like a World War II photography
Hmm.
sort of
Hmm.
thing, right? You know, and
Yeah,
you have
yeah,
the different elements that you would expect to see in something like that, but just make it focused around, model kits.
right.
Mm.
But the photographs of them, that
Mm.
idea both appeals and fascinates me because
Mm.
I did see just not all that long ago one of the great figure painters there in Japan,
Mm.
Hayano-san. I'm pretty sure his name is. Uh, that's how he did his display there.
Mm.
Was instead of
The
I think
models
he
themselves there.
yeah I don't think he
He may
actually
have
had
had
the
some. Mm.
right. But most of it was the photography because
Mm.
it lended itself more to in-person viewing,
Yeah.
being that they were greatly scaled up.
Mm.
Uh,
Sure.
the Yeah, that's one of the challenges we have with the miniature work, isn't it? That
Mm.
they don't always look the same as how we can capture the photo of it.
Mm.
Which, if the photographer is, if the photographer is the same person, they tend to be able to get it. But yeah, if you can be in tune with the image you wanted to share
Mm.
with the particular model, that can be really powerful.
Sure.
Because that's a tough one.
Mm.
Yeah, because even though I said I felt the publications were very strong for it, uh, it does depend on how the layout folks see your work as well. Because then, and this is not positive nor mine. This is just a thing
Mm.
that if they see it as something that should be seen from far away or combined with something else, depending
Mm.
on the layout on the page versus being the main thing shown on the page,
Mm.
can greatly influence how
Mm.
your perception of it is then expressed to others.
Mm.
Yeah. So the various layers, it does become quite a thing. How do you share your work best with
Mm.
others? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for
I mean,
thinking and mentioning that. That's a cool idea.
well, I think it seems obvious now that the main thing that it seems like every kind of direction we're thinking about this, every time we keep coming back to the presentation of it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's the main thing, right? At the end of the day, how it's presented is going to be kind of the key to unlocking this sort of realism. But so
Sure.
yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing to think about. I'm glad that we were able to talk about it a bit. I'm sure we could go on and on, like brainstorming about this, and it'll be something we continue to think about.
Can I thank you for this?
Yeah.
I mean, this Tomoe, so my wife, was greatly impressed and surprised by this topic and your
Mm.
choice of it. So I wanted to make a mention and say thank you. I feel this is, dude, this is not a box pop.
Mm.
This is so much more. I mean, this conversation could reach somebody and help somebody
Mm.
to unlock something in their skill, in their mind,
Mm.
to produce some fantastic work. So,
Mm.
just from myself, I'd like to thank you for this contribution,
Ah,
and to invite me to be part of it too. That
yeah.
was cool. You could tell, man, I was so thrown by these questions.
Yeah, and I should make that clear to people too who are going to be watching that I gave Lincoln like I told him what I wanted to talk about, but
Yeah,
not in
realism,
great detail.
but
Yeah, not
realism
very
to me
clearly.
means
Right.
yeah.
Hmm.
Well, no, it means many things, but I
Mm.
was I was fascinated by it, and I really appreciate the opportunity to speak more about
I'm
quite an
sure had
esoteric topic.
I mean, had we like planned out the conversation more ahead of time and like really gotten into it, then I think we would have lost a lot
Mm,
of the things that just kind of came about like spontaneously, right?
sure.
We could have produced like a very highly planned a video about a quarter of the length of what this total discussion is going to be. It could have been very cogent and precise, but I'm
But it
sure
would be
there's
different. Yeah, but it
yeah.
would be different.
Mm.
This was real. This was raw. So
Mm.
yeah, there's some goodness to that.
Yeah, I think
And
so.
this is a good one. Instead of looking at me, and look at Zach, but don't look at me. But to listen whilst you're working. This could be quite useful and
Yeah.
thought-provoking. So
Yeah.
that's a wonderful thing. So
Yeah, I
thank
hope
you.
so.
I wanted to say thank you for letting me involved with it. Be
Ah.
involved with it, Zach. I was surprised and impressed.
Well, I know. I always love a good chance to talk with you. Not you, but you guys watching this, you audience watching this. You know, Lincoln just talked a couple weeks ago for a few hours, maybe
I
double
was
the
quite a
length
few
of this
hours. Yeah.
conversation.
Right.
Just
Right.
not as any sort of like, not as producing any sort of content, but just, between each other. So I always enjoy our conversations thing. So, this one in
No, very
particular,
much
I
so.
thought
That's why I
was a
always
good
say
one.
yes.
Yeah.
I always say yes. I always show up. No, it's a
But this one
it's a
was good
treat.
this one was good to share with people too. So yeah, like you said,
I get
hope,
excited when I get a message from Zach. Hey, Link, do you want to do something? I'm like, yes, of course, always.
and I hope again, you guys. It's always when I want to say you. I feel like I have to clarify if I'm talking to
It's
you,
okay.
Lincoln,
It's
or
okay.
you in the audience. But you guys in the audience, I hope you'll carry on the discussion in the comments section, or in your own private. If you're in Lincoln's Discord or in my Discord, we should plug that as well too, of course.
Sure.
Different communities, but wherever you're in touch with people in the community, or like I said, or just down in the comments below this video, you guys share your thoughts and ideas, and it'll be interesting. I'm sure, like I said, it's a topic that I'm sure we could go on and on talking about, but there's also, I'm sure, ideas that other people will have in the comment section that will be, other.
Well,
ideas.
someone's going to have way better ideas than me.
Yeah, of course.
So I'll be checking out the comments too.
It will be interesting to see kind of where the discussion continues on after just our talking. But I'll make another reference here before we end to somebody who I also don't really support, especially now. And I can't remember the actor's name off the top of my head, but recently he's gone like way off the deep end of like crazy. This particular actor, it's the actor from The Thin Red Line. You know that movie?
Sean Penn.
No. I hate Sean Penn too, but no.
Oh, his was the old version. I think they did a new version, didn't they?
I don't know. It's been around for a little bit, but he has this monologue in the movie about the human condition, essentially. I could say, and like the end of it is like talking about how evil came about and this and like what the humanity's effect is on the world, and like this at the end of the quote anyway has always been like so powerful to me, asking the question, have you passed through this night? And I always thought that was like so interesting to think about, like, have you lived, like, have you truly seen like or experienced how dark the world can be? And I think that's a very difficult thing to imagine if you haven't. So like that particular film is set, like in the war setting. So like that's the framing for that. But I think that question and that idea is kind of tied to what we're talking about.
But
can you
have
really
you also?
that?
I'd also ask if people have really lived through, the goodness of humanity too, because this one has been So I don't want to start a whole new thing for you, but I just wanted to. I got to say something positive. That's my thing, but I've been amazed at how the worldwide community has come together over the past few months based on a real evil happening in the world, and it totally had the opposite and the galvanizing effect that the perpetrator of the evil did not expect. How all the countries have really come together and been supportive. I mean, we can do more, I think, but and like I said, I don't want to get political, but I've been amazed at how good humanity has been about it as well. So it's one of those things that there's always the duality, isn't there? That neither one exists by itself. There's always the yin and yang of things, isn't there? The positive and the negativity to it. So
no, I think it's a really good point.
That despite people being able to point towards, they can finger point towards the most horrible of things. I think that also then gives contrast and light to the best of things that we do, like making sci-fi models. Well, it's a lot of it is about the contrast. between
Yes.
the going all the way from the darkest to the brightest. And I'd like to believe that about humanity as well.
And yeah, I mean, really, you're exactly right. And in that, I think that can also be almost equally difficult to portray in a model kit. As I mean, like, yeah, most of the conversation we've been kind of focusing on like the dark side of stuff, but yeah, to really portray in a way that somebody looking at the model kit can really get that feeling of the good side of something that can also be kind of difficult to portray when it's just a model of a robot with a gun.
Because that can totally be our theme, right? Despite us showing the reality or showing a realistic aspect of something, we could equally then use that as the opportunity to contrast and show the goodness of something in that same piece. That's why I kind of went towards that versus theme.
Yeah.
Of showing the good defeating evil, for example.
Yeah.
Not just focus on body count.
Yes. All right. Yes. Yeah. I feel like we could get right back into it.
Yeah. Sorry. I'll leave it at that. That was my last one. It was about, taking a positive from that page. But we only notice the positive by peering into the darkness. Would be probably how I'd sum that up.
Yes. It's a good ending point because it's a good place for the after discussion to kind of take off from, maybe, for it to go that way. But anyway, again, Link, thank you for your time as always. But it sounds like you've also had a good time discussing. I have too.
Yes, I have.
I'm sure we could go on, but yeah, it is getting late here, and hope that gives people a good, ideas, things to think about for now, and they can carry on the discussion.
Yeah, thanks for listening through with us, guys. I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Sure.